Hi friend, it's story time again. Tonight we're leaving behind your warm bed, your softly humming fan. Maybe even the sleepy neighbor's dog barking to streets away. Tonight, you're stepping barefoot well. Wooden sandals first into Ito's Yoshiwari. The lantern minus lit maze behind high walls where respectable men come to forget they're respectable. Spoiler: you probably won't last today here. Not your wallet, not your legs, not even your pride will walk out untouched. If you're ready to unwind, maybe press like or subscribe only if it feels gentle and right for you. And did love to know, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, let the room grow quiet. Let your breath slow. Let the story begin. You stand at the foot of Lantern Alley, adjusting your sash for the 10th time. You've been telling yourself all day that you wouldn't really come here. That you'd eke through the willow gate, maybe glance at the lamps swinging above the wooden eaves and then turn back to your tatami mat at home. But you didn't turn back. Of course you didn't. No one does. The air here is different. Thicker, like sweet incense and drain minus soaked wood. Behind you, the clatter of get ace handles reminds you you're not alone. Idle men drift in 2s and 3s, pretending they're just here for a walk. Some have faces half minus hidden under travel hats, collars pulled high. Nobody really wants to be recognized slipping through the main gate of Yoshiwari, at least not by the wrong wife or the wrong taxman. At the entrance, a row of tall lanterns flickers in the mist. Red paper, black calligraphy, a few moths bumping against the silk glow. Each lantern promises something. Warmth, music, a painted smile, though none of those come free. 2 guards stand by the heavy wooden gate. They wear simple cotton but hold polished ear tips that catch the lantern light like tiny moons. They don't check your name. They check your posture, your purse, your hesitation. Hesitate too long and they might invite you to find your pleasure somewhere cheaper. You shuffle forward, head a little lower than you deplay it. There's no shame in this, you remind yourself half of Ito passes through this street. Sooner or later. Samurai, merchants, actors, scribes. Sometimes the same man in all for disguises. And so you join them, sandals tapping against wet stone, as the willow gate sighs open. Inside, the walls rise on either side like lacquered arms, blocking out the gray city behind you. What's left is an island of shadows and laughter. Yoshiwari's famous grid of wooden lanes glows soft under rows of lanterns, each one painted with the name of a house, a promise of entertainment, a rumor of beauty worth more than your week's wages. You tell yourself you're here for the atmosphere just to see how the other half wastes its silver. Maybe you were shamed to drift out from a lattice window, smell the grilled deal, pretend you have enough coins to taste it. You tuck your sleeves tighter around your wrists, not because it's cold, but because every breeze here wants to reach and unpull your last copper coin away. A procession passes you by 2 young pages in matching indigo yukata, balancing wide platters of seiken sweet dumplings. They nod politely when you step aside. A small bow barely there. Even that tiny gesture tells you this isn't your street yet. You're just a guest, and the walls want you to remember it. Past the lantern row, the sounds shift. Less of the outer city-esque gossip and clatter, more of the indoor hush you could almost taste. Curtains sway behind wooden grates. Paper doors slide open just enough for a painted face to glance your way. Fan raised just below a pair of calm eyes. You're not meant to see more than that. Not yet. The best glimpses are paid for in advance. Somewhere ahead, an old man sweeps the cobbles with a short broom, moving slower than time itself. HES there every night. They say part cleaner, part rumor collector. His eyes flick over your sandals, up to your hair. He knows which house you'll pick before you do. Which purse you'll empty, which lie you'll tell when you stumble home at dawn. He doesn't need to smile. HES seen your type before. And so you keep walking deeper into Lantern Alley, where each lamp sways just enough to whisper stay a while, spend a while, where every footstep sounds softer than the one before, until you start to wonder if maybe this little dreamland really does float above the city on clouds of silken coin. You hear music now, thin Shane sun notes threading through the air like silk threads on a loom. Laughter too. Gentle at first, then sharper when the door slides shut again. You breathe in, try to taste the sound. It tastes expensive. Under your sleeve, your fingers pinch the cloth purse hidden in your sash. Still there. Still heavy enough to walk a little deeper. But not heavy enough to leave whole. Everyone knows that part Lantern Alley always asks for a piece more than you plan to give. But tonight you're here anyway, sandals damp, pride intact for now. Let's see how long that lasts. You pass under the willow gate before you even notice its name. It's just a narrow bend in the alley, marked by a low branch brushing the crown of your head if you're tall or too careless. Of course, everyone does. There's an old superstition here that if you let the willow touch your hair, you'll lose a piece of your luck inside. Not that anyone's left this place with all their luck anyway. A watchman leans against the post where the gate begins, a wooden pillared arcade with aged the oil from 1,000 passing sleeves. His lantern is the only thing that flickers, a single circle of yellow against the drifting dusk. He doesn't speak as you pass. He doesn't have to. He stare checks the tilt of your belt, the scuffs on your sandals, the tremble in your fingers when you adjust your sleeve for the third time. Behind him, 2 boys squat by a brazier, playing a dice game with whispered curses. They glance up just long enough to smirk. Another lost rooster come to be plucked. They've seen dozens like you tonight, and we'll see dozens more before the lanterns dim at dawn. Here, you're not unique. You're just fresh. The willow branch shivers above you in the breeze. Beyond it, the soundscape shifts again. The outer alley's soft laughter fades into something closer and yet oddly more distant. You hear a bell chime somewhere inside a wooden gate. The click of gate sandals on polished floors. A hush of sliding doors closing behind a new customer. Someone braver, richer, or at least drunker than you. Your feet shuffle, dragging your doubts along the cobbles. For a heartbeat you think about turning around, slipping back through the willow, past the watchman. Away from eyes that know too much. Maybe the world outside the wall looks dull by comparison, but at least the walls don't move in to swallow you whole. But you don't turn back. Of course you don't. Not when the lanterns ahead promise more. They lean out over doorways and eaves like glowing invitations, some shaped like gourds, others like tiny temples. Black ink calligraphy lists the house names Kikusui, Sumiria, Wakamutsu. You can read them all, but you know enough to know which ones you can't afford. A pair of older men pass you from behind. Merchants, judging by the cloth minus wrapped ledgers tucked into their sashes. One stifles a laugh behind his fan as he glances at your half-minus hidden purse. He remembers being you. Once staring at the signs, trying to guess which door's worth the last coin in the fold of your OBI. He doesn't stop to explain. He doesn't have to. Up ahead, you spot your first house attendant. She stands just outside a sliding door. No older than 16 maybe, a bright blue cotton kimono stiff with starch and pattern. Her hair pinned tight, eyes lowered to the flagstones as she waits. If you were expecting a painted court saint to greet you, you've come too soon. First, you deal with the invisible keepers. Those who sweep, light the lamps, watch you like cats through half-minus open shutters. When your gaze lingers too long, she lifts her eyes just enough to meet yours. The moment passes, one heartbeat of silent measurement. Then she bows, a shallow bend at the waist, enough to remind you that here, every move costs something. A bow returned. A bow that means yes, I am here to be seen, but only so far. The real show is deeper inside. You walk on. Or rather, You let the path pull you deeper. The alley behind you is gone now, swallowed by the bend in the willow's quiet sway. Ahead, the lamps hang lower, warmer, catching the knots in the wooden beams and turning them into shadows that look like brushstrokes upon old silk. Ito's outer streets smell of fishes smoked in river mud. The air smells of cedar, ink, and the faint sweetness of sake being warmed somewhere out of reach. Another watchman appears at the far corner, leaning lazily on a halberd. His eyes flick past you to the purse-eyed at your side. If he doubts you belong here, he doesn't say so. He only nods, once, as if to say, mind your coins. Mind your mouth, mind your pride. The rest will sort itself out or not. You pause halfway between the willow and the warm hush that waits beyond. Maybe you imagine it, or maybe it's the wind. But you swear the branch behind you shivers again, reminding you that the gate's always open. Going back is easy, leaving clean is not. And so you breathe in, square your shoulders, check that your sandals haven't betrayed you by squeaking too loud, and step forward anyway. Deeper into this hidden city within a city, where the willow gate closes behind you like a whispered dare. The coins in your purse aren't the only things that feel heavy now. You can hear them when you walk little sea lengths, like a polite reminder from your future self that tonight will cost more than money. But that future self is quiet for now, smothered under the hush of wooden beams and paper walls that don't seem to echo anything except your heartbeat. You reach the entrance hall wide, low-minus silencing room just past a bamboo screen. A lacquered sign above your head politely reminds you no sandals beyond this point. Not that you can read the brushwork, but the attendant who appears can. She bows just deep enough to catch the edge of your sleeve as she gestures toward the rows of giddy shelves. Here, your wooden clogs come off. Simple enough, but there's a dance to it. Left foot, right foot, toes pointed just so, back straight. Your hands don't hover or fidget because that would betray that you have no idea what you're doing. The young woman who collects your gide has seen thousands of hesitant bows, thousands of awkward foreigners to this world, even if they're born and raised streets over. She slips your shoes into an empty cubby. In their place, she offers you a pair of soft indoor slippers. They're plain, linen minus wrapped, and slightly too small. On purpose, perhaps, to remind you who owns every step you take beyond this point. A faint smile tugs at the corners of her mouth when you bend to slip them on. Not cruel, just amused. She's seen customers try to balance on one leg, wobble, nearly topple into the neat stack of umbrellas by the door. You manage to stand without tipping. A small victory, invisible but comforting. Behind you, another customer enters, a young clerk by the look of his ink-stained sleeves. He does it effortlessly. Sandals off, slippers on, bow to the attendant. No wasted motion. You pretend not to watch, but your shoulders hunch all the same. The clerk sees you anyway, nods once. A comrade in this little ritual of being stripped of what's yours to borrow it's not. The floor here is polished cedar. It creaks just enough to remind you it's older than you. Older than your father's father, if the stories are true. These buildings have been taken apart and rebuilt so many times they know the shape of your foot before you even touch the boards. From deeper inside comes the faintest music. The sigh of a shamisen string, the tap of a koto bridge being adjusted. Laughter spills out too, lightened, brightened, a little edged. It curls under the paper screens, over the stacked kimonos waiting to be chosen for the next guest who thinks silk can buy more time, and it really does. Your attendant gestures again, this time to a small bench tucked in the corner. There's a basket waiting there. Your outer coat goes in, another thin layer of you, folded away for safekeeping, though the only thing really being kept is the illusion that you might get it all back at the end of the night. When you straighten up, she's holding a tiny slip of paper. It's not a bill, not yet. It's a token, a promise that your coat is yours again when you leave. provided you settle every tally that piles up behind her name while you pretend to belong here. You nod like you understand, even though you don't. She bows again, slightly deeper this time, a signal that you're free to step forward. And just like that, your feet slide from the cold wood of the entrance to the warmer hush of the inner hall, where tatami mats wait to mute your footsteps and the real cost of the night waits to count every one of them. A soft trestle follows you, a whisper of the Norn curtain swaying behind your shoulders. The sandals you wore and stay behind. So does a piece of your spine, maybe. So does the thought that you could still run for it. Ahead, the air thickens warmer now, tinged with incense that clings to your hair the moment you pass under the next lamp. Somewhere above the beams, you hear a soft knock. Someone sliding a door open, just wide enough to peek at the new fool who thinks he can afford a night behind paper screens. You shift your feet inside the slippers. They squeak. Of course they do. The sound snaps you back to the polished cedar floor. The attendant who took your coat is already gone. Like your sandals, like your excuses. Ahead, another door waits. Another bow, another coin. Another step deeper into a place that never really lets you leave. Not the same way you came in. If you think the last door was where you leave your pride behind, think again. The next set of steps is where you lose whatever sense of control you thought you smuggled past the gate. You follow the hush of your own slippers down a short, covered walkway. Outside the latticed windows, lanterns bob in the dusk, their warm glow mirrored in the slick black hair of passing attendants. Their laughter drifts through the cracks, never loud, never crude, just enough to remind you that you're the newest face here, and that fresh faces are the best faces for emptying purses. The walkway turns, and suddenly you're in a side chamber. Its floor a patchwork of tatami so tightly bound you could trace the gridwork with your bare toes. But you won't your borrowed slippers stay on. Another polite rule for a guest pretending not to be out of place. A boy no older than 15 appears, so quiet you don't hear him until HES kneeling at your side. He carries a square rail anchored to a shine you can see your own worried brow in. On the trace it's a small cup of tea in a shallow dish. You glance at it. Coins. Your coins. Or they were yours. The boy bows so low his forehead nearly brushes the mat. He doesn't have to. The message is older than the paper walls themselves. Before you cross any further, you cross silver to palm. You reach for your sash, fingers clumsy on the knot. The coins hit the dish one by one, ringing out in this small hush like pebbles drop down a well. Each clink is a piece of the outside world you'll have to buy back tomorrow, if tomorrow wants to give it back at all. When the last coin lands, the boy sets the tray aside and pours your tea. The steam curls up, carrying the sharp bite of roasted barley. You lift it to your lips. It tastes like the thin line between polite welcome and polite robbery. You sip anyway. Outside, a shutter rolls open for a moment. A glimpse of another man half-minus bowed before a different boy with a different tray. No one gets through without paying first. A brief nod passes between you, an unspoken commiseration among strangers who came here hoping to be someone more interesting for a night. The nod says, "May our money last longer than our illusions." You drain the cup. The boy takes it back with both hands, fingers barely brushing yours. Another bow, another shuffle backward, so smooth you think HED practiced it since birth. Maybe he has. When you stand, you feel the weight of your half-minus empty purse. It feels lighter than the air, heavier than your shoulders. A fresh voice breaks your trance. A new attendant told her this time, her robe edged with patterns of cranes and pines. She bows a little deeper than the boy, a little shallower than your wallet deserves. Her sleeve sweeps the floor as she gestures to the next room, a deeper corridor, another soft lantern swaying like it's nodding you forward. As you step through, You notice a carved sign above the doorframe, one you can almost read thanks to those borrowed hours at your neighbor's writing class. It's just two characters, simple and clean. Entrance spade. Not welcome. Not friend. Just a marker that says, you belong here until you don't. You pass under it anyway. Inside, the light shifts. Shadows lean closer. The paper walls glow from within. Silhouettes of other guests, other attendants. Other whispered bargains that have nothing to do with you yet feel like they might tomorrow. The crane-robed woman gestures for you to kneel by a low bench. She slides open a narrow cabinet, and inside, resting on a red silk cloth, waits a row of new indoor slippers. Better ones. Softer soles. Fresh stitching. A small luxury for someone who's already traded tomorrow's rice for tonight's silk. You slip your feet into them. The crane-robed woman smiles just the corner of her mouth. Just enough to say, now you're ready to meet the house properly. Are you? You glance over your shoulder, back at the closed door. The coins you left behind are silent now, but you swear you can hear them, singing a soft goodbye that no one but you will mourn in the morning. The hush of the corridor is a trick. It calms you just enough to forget you're about to be judged in ways no polite tea ceremony ever prepared you for. The crane-robed attendant leads you through a bend so tight your new slippers whisper against the tatami like moth wings. Ahead, a thin screen flickers with painted shadows, peonies, branches, a swirl of clouds rendered in ink and patience. Somewhere behind that fragile paper, a samus end strikes its first slow note, the kind that sits behind your ribs instead of your ears. She stops. You stop. Her sleeve lifts, fingertip touching the edge of the screen as if asking permission on your behalf. Then, with a slide soft as breath, the panel shutters open. You step through and find yourself in a room so carefully arranged it feels like a stage, except the actors are you and the others like you. And the audience is hidden, waiting to decide if you're worth the next act. A dozen men kneel on square cushions, each clutching the same polite posture. Knees folded, back straight, eyes carefully lowered so they don't linger too long where they shouldn't. Some breathe shallowly, stealing glances when they think no one notices. You notice, because you're doing it too, in front of you. An empty cushion waits freshly fluffed, a small bowl of pickled radish resting beside it. You lower yourself onto it, trying not to look like someone who's only ever knelt to patch a roof or mend a fence. A tatami pricks your ankles through your borrowed robe. It reminds you that comfort isn't the point he renders is. A pair of low paper lamps spill warm light onto a lacquered table at the far end of the room. Behind it, a folding screen painted with cranes and pines rises like a polite wall between you and the truth that you're here to be seen, but not really heard yet. From somewhere behind the screen, soft laughter drifts out, weaving through the air like incense. It's hers than men around you, backs straighten a fraction more, hands tighten over sashes. The coins hidden inside suddenly feeling too few. One by one, the curtains part just enough for a figure to appear, an older man in layered robes, face carved with a permanent half-Midas smile. Hes the Nakuai, the middleman, the minder. The polite reminder that no one here truly talks to the courtesans alone. He speaks your name, not the one your mother calls you, but the surname you gave at the gate, all polished and proper. He draws it out like a silk cord, inspecting it for phrase. You nod when he glances your way. You bow when he does. The others do too, creating a wave of collective humility that only makes the silence heavier. Then, at last, he steps aside, and you see them. They emerge like a painted scroll unrolling, a line of courtesans gliding in slow formation, kimono sleeves brushing the floor, hair lacquered and pinned so intricately you half-minus expect the ornaments to chime like wind bells. Their eyes sweep the room the way an artist's brush sweeps a canvas. Deliberate, unhurried, unforgiving. Your breath catches when one looks at you. Directly, clearly. You look away too quickly, then curse yourself silently. You're not here to look away. You're here to be looked at and to look back properly. Behind the courtesans, apprentices hover like shadows, hairs simpler, robes lighter, faces bright with the knowledge that someday they'll stand where these painted queens stand now. For now, they're the echo, the future promise. The ones who fetch fresh sake into just the screens so secrets stay secret. The Naka clears his throat. One by one, the courtesans' names drift into the air. Some men perk up when a name matches a rumor they've heard. Eamon beside you shifts so subtly you almost miss this purse pressing against his thigh like a final, desperate vow that tonight he'll be chosen. Or at least noticed. But here's the part that pricks your pride you don't choose. Not exactly. You might wish, you might hint, you might pray to every lucky god you can remember. But the real choice comes from the woman behind the painted lips and measured glance. She decides if you look interesting enough, if your posture is straight enough, your coins heavy enough, your small talk good enough. The silence that follows is not quite silence at all, it's the sound of dozens of tiny judgments settling in the corners of the room like drifting dust. A single flick of a fan can decide whose dreams keep drifting tonight and who's end here with a polite bow and an emptier purse. Somewhere behind you, someone stifles a cough. Someone else sighs too loud, earning a look from the Nakoi that says control yourself. You press your palms to your knees and wonder which is louder, your heartbeat or your stomach, which suddenly remembers you skipped dinner in your excitement to get here. One of the courtesans steps forward, her painted feet silent on the tatami. She raises her fan, tilts her chin ever so slightly and gestures. Not at you. Not this time. The man 3 cushions away bows so low his forehead taps the mat. The room shifts with envy disguised as polite encouragement. His night just became a story. Yours waits its turn. The Naka bows again. The chosen guest rises, his grin trying hard to be humble. You watch him slip through another paper screen, laughter and Sam as endnotes rising to swallow him whole. And you? Use it, ankles aching, heart thumping, waiting to find out if tonight you'll walk through the next door or back the way you came, with your pride folded into the sleeve of your borrowed robe. You tell yourself you're not jealous. You're just observant. That's all. The man who just slipped away with the court saying, did nothing you didn't do except maybe breathe more evenly, smile more humbly, bow at the precise right angle. Maybe his pouch of coins didn't rattle so apologetically when he sat down. You shift your weight, ankles whispering a protest under your knees. The tatami mat has a way of reminding you that here, even the floor demands respect. A soft creak of wood above you hints at other rooms, other secrets being sealed behind paper doors. Somewhere up there, someone's lucky night is already unfolding. The Naka glides by again, pausing to glance at you with that unreadable, polite half-minus smile. He adjusts his screen so it shields you from a draft that was really there more for show than warmth. He nods, as if to say, try to look like you belong. You nod back, try not to look like someone whose entire life has been fields and fish markets. Time here doesn't tick. It slides. The lamps stay dim but steady, shadows curling around the edges of the room, wrapping you in soft conspiracy. You hear another laugh from behind the next screen, sweet, controlled, a hint that inside, another man is telling the same stale joke that works only when a woman this practiced chooses to let it work. Then the door shuffles again. This time the courtesan who enters docent glide she commands. She stands a breath taller than the others, her hair arranged in loops so precise it might have taken half the district's beeswax to pin it all in place. Her kimono is so layered it rustles like silk armor. Her gaze sweeps the room once, twice landing here and there with the weight of a nod or a quiet dismissal. And then she looks at you. You've prepared for this. At least you thought you did. You lower your eyes just enough to show respect, but not so low that you vanish. You bow, forehead nearly touching the floor, then straighten before your legs remember to tremble. You catch the faintest lift of her eyebrow, a question. Maybe, or a test you didn't study for. The Naka clears his throat again, the way a temple bell might clear the clouds. The courtesan shifts her fan in her sleeve, hides half her face behind it, yet her eyes stay on you. They flicker. A signal? Or just dust in your lashes? Your stomach twists like a wet cloth. If she chooses you, it's not just your night, it's a story you'll spin back home. A thread of silk in the drab cotton of your ordinary days. If she doesn't, you'll bow out, pockets lighter, head lower, the smell of incense clinging to your robe like a joke no one will ever hear. She turns, speaks a few low words to the Nakai. He bows deeper than he did for the last man. His eyes flick to you. He gestures. You feel it before you stand every gaze, and the room pinches at your shoulders, measuring whether you deserve this. You swallow, push your palms against the tatami and rise. Your knees crack like a hidden drum beat. You hope no one notices. You know they do. She waits for you to catch up. Doesn't look back. Her footsteps whisper down the corridor. You follow at the perfect distance, close enough to show your place, far enough to show you know it. The knocker drifts behind, sealing off the curious eyes of the room you've just left. You step into a smaller chamber, warm with candlelight in the faint, sticky sweetness of plum wine. The door slides shut behind you, one soft scrape of wood and the air shifts. It's quieter here, yet somehow louder in your chest. She sits on a cushion by a low-lacquered table. A single cup waits. Another fan appears in her hand. She studies you through its painted ribs as if weighing whether your soul might stay in her sleeve. When she speaks, her voice is softer than you expected. It doesn't match the rigid loops of her hair or the fortress of silk around her. She asks your name, not the surname the Naka used, but your name, the one you almost forgot to remember tonight. You give it. She repeats it back to you, testing its weight on her tongue. Her lips barely move. You wonder how many other names just ride on this way, slipping them on and off like borrowed kimonos. A girl in simpler robes appears at your elbow. A Amaro, an apprentice barely old enough to tie her own obi. She pours the plum wine, bowing so deeply her forehead kisses the floor. You mumble thanks, voice to thick. The courtesan arches an eyebrow again, your first test. You correct yourself, add the right honorific S, the right bow, the right half-minus smile that says I know him below you. And that's the point. She lets you sweat a moment longer, then gestures for you to drink. You do, carefully pretending you don't see, your own trembling hands reflected in the lacquered rim. She leans in, just enough for the silk to sigh around her. She asks you where you're from, what you do, who you think you are, sitting here in a dream you can barely afford. Your answers are polite, simple, true at least. The parts that matter. The lies are smaller than the silences you swallow between them. She nods, sips her own wine, studies your face the way a cat studies a bird it isn't sure it wants to catch. For a breath or two, the world outside this paper room doesn't exist. There is only the hush of silk, the warmth of sake, the weight of a gaze that might decide whether you'll spend the next hour as a man someone chose or as someone else's cautionary tale. You've crossed the first threshold. You haven't been dismissed. Yet. Outside, the samisen plays on, unbothered by your racing pulse. Inside, you learn the first rule of surviving a night in Yoshi War: speak less, bow deeper, and never believe for a second that the dream is yours to keep. The door slides open again, just wide enough for the corridor's lantern glow to spill across the tatami. The knocker bows low behind you, his voice a quiet reminder that the world outside this small chamber hasn't stopped spinning just because you've forgotten how to breathe. She stands, no rustle, no fuss, just the soft shift of a silk cushion around her feet. She doesn't beckon. She doesn't have to. You rise before your knees remember to ache. You bow. Lower this time, careful not to look too eager or too stiff. If you do it wrong, you look like a boy. If you do it right, you still look like a boy, just one with enough sense to pay for this lesson. Out in the corridor, the air is cool against your face. The lamps sway in the draft that sneaks through the slatted screens. Two more courtesans drift past, trailing junior girls behind them like delicate shadows with downcast eyes. Somewhere behind you, a guest's laughter cracks the hushy burst of sake heat spilling into these carefully drawn lines of order. She walks ahead of you, her wood unclogs clacking on polished planks. Each step lands exactly where it must. It's not quite dancing yet, it's not quite walking, either. You follow, matching her pace by half a heartbeat. To walk beside her would be rude, to lag too far would be worse. So you hover in that perfect gap, close enough to catch the faint perfume she leaves behind, distant enough to remember you are not here as an equal. The hallway widens. The hush grows heavier, like snow piling up on a rooftop, soundless but certain. Other guests swayed along the corridor's edge. Some standing, some kneeling, pretending not to watch while they watch everything. The Naka gestures you aside for a moment, adjusting your robe where it's slipped too low on your collarbone. A whisper of fabric, a quiet tap to straighten your sash like a tailor fussing over a half-finished mannequin. Then he steps back. The courtesan does not look at you. She looks at the doorhead, a painted screen that slides open as if it knows its place in this performance. Beyond it lies the main walkway, the heart of Yoshiwara's secret theater. This is not where the deals are made, but where they're displayed. Where the unspoken agreements of money, status, and craving are paraded like soap banners. A small gathering waits. Musicians crouched with their shamisen, a pair of Kayamaro fussing over the courtesan's sleeves, straightening each fold until it falls like a waterfall of brocade. A hush sweeps through the watchers. Men, older women, curious boys peeking through the fence they're not really supposed to press their faces against. The "Oh, you're on mine" is due chew. The flowers parade is about to begin. You realize with a low sting of dread you're part of it. Not the main flower, not even the vase. You're more like the soil that says, "This bloom is so rare it needs someone to remind you how rare." You are here to walk 2 steps behind, to prove she does not walk alone, but also never walks with you. A camera places a paper lantern in your hand. It's lighter than it looks, but your grip tightens anyway, as if it might float off and betray you for the amateur you are. Another servant touches your shoulder, guiding you to stand where you're meant to stand, precisely 3 tatami from her right sleeve. The musicians pluck their strings 3 notes at first, then a gentle trickle of melody that sounds almost too fragile to carry all the silken secrets. She shifts her weight, lifts her chin, and the entire room seems to exhale. She steps forward. You step when she does. Too soon would be clumsy. Too late would be insulting. The watchers bow. Some whisper. You keep your eyes low, but you feel their stares pressing into your hairline, your shoulders, your trembling lantern. Outside, the courtyard stones catch the lantern light in small glints, flickering like tiny eyes that see everything. The willow branches sway in the night breeze, watchful sentinels that know how many footsteps have come and gone here, how many promises drifted away before the dawn. The crave is not long in distance, but it's long in time. Each step is deliberate, measured to remind every watching soul that beauty costs more than gold. A courtesan's reputation is a performance that never ends, even when the audience is just you and a moth circling your lantern flame. Occasionally, she glances over her shoulder. Barely, and your heart through is like the shamisen strings behind you. Her gaze says nothing and everything at once. Don't stumble. Don't forget your place. Don't dream you'll ever be more than this. The procession reaches the inner courtyard, where another screen waits. half open to swallow the whole display like a final bow. The music fades. The onlookers disperse satisfied with the soft scandal of seeing used, and so close to her yet so impossibly far. Inside again, the lantern is taken from your hand, your fingers uncramp with a shameful shiver. She pauses, half turned toward you, fan flicking open like a sigh. A nod, almost a smile, or maybe just a flicker of candlelight on her painted lips. You bow lower this time, your forehead brushing the clean shell of the tatami. You have survived the parade. Behind the next paper door, your real test waits, one that no lamp or willow or shinsun can make softer. In Yoshiwara, the steps may be slow, but the night always moves faster than you're ready for. The courtyard hush folds behind you, like a sliding door softly shutting away the eyes of everyone you just paraded past. For a moment, your heartbeat is the only thing that feels relay small drum hidden under your robe, knocking against your ribs as if it too wants to bow to the Oiran. You're back in the private hallway now, narrower than the parade path, but no less intimidating. The lanterns here are fewer, dimmer, leaving soft pools of golden light where your feet have to land. A slip here on the polished wood, on your own nerves, would echo through this place like thunder. She doesn't slow for you. Why would she? She's done her part, shown you off. Shown herself off, reminded everyone that no matter how much silver you borrowed to be here tonight, it's still hers to accept or reject. You trail her deeper into the building, past sliding screens painted with curling waves and cranes that never lift their heads. The hum of the shamisen fades behind you. There's the soft splash of water ahead, muted voices, girlish laughter behind a reed screen. Bathing. You'd heard about it. You'd even joked about it with your friends once outside, far from here, where you could afford to laugh big and stupid about naked adventures in the floating world. But here, your throat is dry. The closer you get, the less your feet seem to belong to you. She stops. A servant appears silent, as if conjured by the scent of steam. She bows low, lifts the curtain for the courtsane to pass through. You stand there, frozen by etiquette and your own pounding blood, until the servant's hand gestures you in. Just a flick of the wrist, no words needed. You obey. The bath chamber is warm and damp, heavy with the smell of Hianuki wooden soap. Candles flicker on the ledges, their light dancing across rippling water. A load-up sits in the center, half minus sunk into the polished floorboards. Nearby, two young attendants kneel beside buckets of steaming water, waiting. Your eyes dart to the courtsane chaise, already slipping out of her heavy outer robe, layers peeling away like soap petals, leaving her draped in a lighter undergarment. Her eyes meet yours for the briefest heartbeat, not for you. That look says everything. This bath is not invitation, it's ritual. Another servant approaches. She bows and gestures for you to sit on the small wooden stool. Your knees bend awkwardly back stiff, like a child waiting to have his hair scrubbed by an ant he barely knows. The first splash hits your shoulders, warm enough to make you flinch. You ought to apologize. Flinching is rude, but the attendant doesn't seem to mind. She pours another bucket, then another, until the chill you carried in from the courtyard melts away into the steam. She rubs your back with a cloth, brisk and impersonal. This isn't the tease your friends joked about. No sly laughter, no giggling hands. This is cleansing, pure, efficient, reminding you that you walked in here carrying the dust of the outside world, and no outside dust is allowed to touch her skin or these floors. Another splash, this time across your hair. Soap bubbles trickle into your eyes, stinging just enough to remind you that dignity is a delicate thing, especially when you're blinking like a startled dog, while an apprentice scrubs your neck. You glance sideways, there she is, sitting on the edge of the tub, ankles hidden beneath a veil of rising steam. Two maids brush her hair, tugging the long dark strands straight, working out the knots from her elaborate coiffure. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't blink. She is still, like a painting of a goddess who knows exactly how mortal you look under this hot water. When the cloth reaches your chest, you inhale, sharply somewhere between a cough and a sigh. The apprentice pauses, then continues. Methodical as ever, your robe, folded and set aside, feels like a symbol of all the layers you thought you wore to protect your pride. Here, pride dissolves like soap. A final bucket that rinses you clean. The apprentice bows, hands you a fresh owl-thin cotton, smelling faintly of cedar and starch. You stand, clumsily covering yourself more from habit than necessity. She gestures for you to step aside. The courtesan stands now too. Her attendants wrap her in fresh silk, each layer folded with precise care. She doesn't look at you again, not fully, but you feel the gravity of her presence. The way the steam curls around her like a shroud spun from secrets. One by one, the servants pack away the buckets, wipe down the wooden stool. Nothing stays wet for long here, no footprints left behind to say you won't ever hear it all. You catch your reflection in the polished water, hair plastered down. Skin pink from scrubbing, eyes wide and stupid with exhaustion and awe. You don't look like the man who bragged about this night outside the tea house. You look like someone else, someone who paid to learn how small he really is. A soft tap on your shoulder. The same silent servant points toward another screen door, time to move. Bathing is only one part of the ritual. You've been washed, like a raw vegetable about to be sliced, plated, and served up to the night's appetite. You clutch your robe tight, step through the veil of steam, and brace yourself for the next lesson in why no man really leaves Yoshiwar the same as he entered. Freshly scrubbed and swaddled in a borrowed robe, you shuffle through the narrow hallway, your bare feet brushing polished wood that smells faintly of soap and old pine. The bathish door slides shut with a soft thud like the lid of a box closing over a secret Yuri still inside. The courtesan walks ahead, her silhouette framed by the paper lanterns swinging from the beams above. She doesn't glance back to see if you're keeping up. It's not her job to guide you gently, her role is to glide. Yours is to follow. And everyone else exists to make sure you remember that. A servant appears at your side, hands folded neatly over a tray. On it, 2 cups of warm sake, a small folded towel, and a single sweet wrapped in rice paper. Maybe a bit too eagerly accept the cup she offers. The sake tastes soft and faintly dry, warmth trickling down your throat like a reminder that tonight isn't over just because you smell like cedar and expensive soap. The courtesan pauses at a low doorway. She waits as another servant kneels, slides the screen open with a whisper of rice paper brushing rice paper. Inside, a flickering candle and the outline of a tatami-floored room waiting for both of you. You kneel first because that's how it's done. Knees together, back straight, your hands pressing the floor, beside your knees an awkward, formal bow that would have earned you laughter back at your local tavern. Here, it earns you nothing but a polite nod from the courtesan. She settles onto her cushion across from you, her sleeves folding like pale wings in her lap. Between you, a small lacquered table. On it, a pair of dishes, a ceramic flask for more sake, a few pieces of pickled radish arranged so precisely they look too pretty to eat. This isn't dinner. It's not meant to fill your belly. It's meant to slow you down, pin you in place, keep you from rushing ahead as if this were just another night out. A maid enters, so silent you dees where she floated in on the draft. She pours more sake, sets down another plate. Tiny rice balls wrapped in salted kelp. She doesn't look at you. Doesn't need to. You're just a temporary fixture here. Like the table, the candle, the half-finished bottle of rice wine. The courtesan lifts her cup. She doesn't drink. She waits. You fumble with your own, nearly spill a drop on the tatami. Catch yourself in time. You lift it toward her, not sure if you're supposed to say something clever, something charming. But the words you rehearsed in your head back in the bath dissolve into steam. She dips her head, lets a single sip pass her lips. That's the start. Not a laugh, not a promise, just the first drop of what might come next if you can keep your tongue tied properly. She asks you something, her voice so soft you almost miss it. It's about your name, your district, the season back where you came from. Easy questions, but each one carries a trap. Answer too casually, and you're a bore. Try too hard to sound important, and you're a fool. She smiles when you get it mostly right. Her teeth barely glimpsed behind her sleeve. Conversation here is a game of careful nudges and graceful retreats. She gives you a topic, maybe the weather. Maybe the plum trees that should be blooming outside the walls right about now, and you're supposed to catch it, hold it delicately, then toss it back without tearing it apart. You remember your mother once told you how words in the wrong mouth can feel heavier than stones. Right now, every syllable weighs 100 coins, and you're paying for every single one. Another cup, another question, another test you didn't even know you were sitting. The court saying doesn't rush. Why would she? The longer you talk, the more you drink, the more silver lines the drawers hidden behind the paper walls. And yet, it doesn't feel cruel. Not really. There's something almost comforting about the ritual of it. Like being a student again. Your posture corrected, your grammar polished. Except this teacher with silk sleeves on dyes that flicker warmer when you get something right. A laugh. Soft, hidden behind her sleeve again. Did you actually say something clever? Or is it just part of the act? You don't know. You'll never really know. But, in this small candlelit room, it doesn't matter. You reach for the rice bowl. Pause. She gestures. Slowly, deliberately for you to go ahead. You pick it up. Bite it in half. Salt, rice, seaweed. The taste stronger than you expected after so much careful sake. She watches tiny details filed away for later gossip, maybe, or just for tonight's ledger. Outside, you hear a door slide open, then close again. Someone else's laughter drifts down the hallway. You wonder if another man is trying to remember the right honorific S, the right angle to bow, the right way to sit so his knees don't go numb before his pride does. The court sign refills your cup. You catch her gaze for a heartbeat too long. She doesn't look away, doesn't smile. Just studies you, as if you're something interesting enough to deserve these walls. This warmth, this fleeting moment of pretend equality. Then she looks down. Conversation over for now. The meal is only half minus finished but fully served. It's a bridge to whatever comes next, a polite speed bump, before the next ritual swallows you whole. You sit there a moment longer, cup warm in your palm, pickled radish untouched on your plate. The paper walls around you hold the candlelight like a soft cage thin enough that you can hear other secrets breathing just beyond them. You swallow the last mouthful of sake, hoping it's enough to soften your tongue for whatever test waits when she finally decides to open another door and wave you through. When the sake is drained and the last rice ball sits alone, a pale crescent on its lacquer plate, the courtesan shifts her weight forward. The silk of her robe whispers across the tatami. No sound in this building is ever truly loud. Everything is arranged to hush your footsteps, your laughter, your greed. All that noise is left outside, with the horses and the hawkers calling for leftover scraps. She rises, graceful as a painted crane on a folding screen, and gestures for you to do the same. Your knees crack like old floorboards. You bow to low. You bow to low. To sudden, and she tilts her head just enough for you to know you did it wrong, but not so much that she'll correct you. You're here to learn through embarrassment. That's part of the cost. The screen slides open again. Another corridor. Another flickering lantern. Shadows move behind other paper walls. Silhouettes in pairs, laughter caught like moths behind parchment. One step, two. The floor creaks, but only under your feet. Hers barely seems to notice Shess there. She stops at a narrow doorway. This door has no painted flowers. No carved lintel, just plain wood polished smooth by 100,000 nervous palms. She taps once. You hear nothing on the other side. Yet somehow, you sense the presence of people. Watching, always watching. Inside. The room is smaller than the first. No table this time. Just a futon folded at the far wall, a low wooden chest. A pair of folded cloths stacked neatly beside a basin of water. The air is scented with something sweet, burnt incense. Hints of plum wine maybe. A fragrance that sticks to the back of your tongue. She gestures for you to sit. Not kneel. This time, sit. Cross-legged, like you might if you were back home squatting by a riverbank. But you don't lean back. You don't sprawl. You stay stiff-backed and polite. Because in this place, even how you bend your spine means something. She kneels across from you, folds her sleeves back, just enough to pour another cup. You shouldn't be drinking more, but here you are. Thirsty not for the sake but for the permission it grants. To loosen your shoulders. To feel, for a moment, that maybe you belong here after all. A maid appears always a maid, appearing when needed, vanishing when not. She carries a fresh tray, tiny pickled plums, slivers of dried fish. More sake, she places it between you with a bow so shallow it's almost sarcastic. Then just on. You didn't hear the door close. But you know Shess out there, on the other side, eavesdropping for the house's profit and the courtesan's reputation. The courtesan lifts a plum to her lips, sets it down without eating it. They signal. This is the moment when the conversation must shift. No more pleasantries about weather or the state of the road that brought you here. Now it's about you, what you want. What you're willing to trade for it, whether you even understand that you're not buying her time so much as renting your own illusions. She asks about your family gently, carefully, as if the answer might slide out between the floorboards if Shess too abrupt. You stumble over the words, trying to sound humble, sound respectable, sound like a man who knows what to say in a house like this. She listens. She smiles once, just a tiny curl at the corner of her mouth that might be real or might be for show. It doesn't matter. You'll remember it tomorrow as real. You'll tell your drinking friends at the bathish that she laughed at your joke one they'll never hear while your coin purse empties into her pockets. She pours another cup. Her sleeve brushes your wrist as she does, a whisper of silk that feels louder than the murmur of voices down the hall. She asks you to taste the fish. To salty on purpose, so you'll reach for the sake again. The game here is ancient. Refined, and you're replaying it badly. But you don't care. Not tonight. Then she leans closer. Close enough that you can see the tiny stitches on her collar, the way her hair is pinned so perfectly not a single strand has dared rebel. She asks you something small. About the journey here, about what you thought you defined behind Yoshi War's gates. You tell her. You speak too long, say too much, because no one ever taught you that a short answer is often the safest. She listens, nods, files every word away like a merchant counting coins behind a lacquer screen. Outside, a hush drifts through the corridor. Another door slides. Another lantern flares. Time stretches here, stitched together by ritual and sake in the hope that the night might never quite reach its end. She touches your sleeve, light as the flick of a fan, a signal. The next part is yours to accept or decline, but everyone knows you won't decline. You stand, knees stiff, head spinning just enough to blame the drink if you stumble. Behind you, the papered door drifts shut again, sealing you into a pocket of warmth and candlelight while the rest of Ito sleeps, just beyond the high walls and watchful gates. Outside, the world turns. Inside, your breath catches on the scent of plum and the promise of secrets that don't belong to you but which you'll cling to anyway. Because that's why you came here. Not for love. Not for lust. But for the story you'll tell yourself tomorrow when the gates open and the daylight reminds you exactly how much it all costs. It's later than you thought. Not that you know exactly what time it is inside these sliding walls and flickering lanterns. Time forgets to move in a straight line. Maybe you're meant to forget how long you've sat here. How many polite bows and say cups have passed between your hands. But you feel it in your bones. And in the hollow of your stomach, where the last rice ball sits uneasy. The courtesan rises again, her sleeves trailing behind her like soft shadows. She doesn't look at you as she moves to the corner of the room, lifting the edge of a paper wall you didn't even realize could slide open. Another chamber, smaller still. No cushions, no tray, just a single futon, folded neat as a monk's robe. Waiting on fresh tatami. She gestures. You stand, because what else can you do? Knees creak, head swims. You feel the chill on your bare feet as you step forward, getting long forgotten at the entrance. There's a ritual to this, like everything else here. You kneel, clumsy, and she pulls the futon open with a flick so practiced it looks like a silk trick. The blanket is thin but clean, the pillow half minus stuffed with buckwheat husks. They say bad for drifting off when your mind can't help but listen through the paper walls. She doesn't lie down yet. Instead, she kneels beside the basin at the room's edge, dips a cloth in cool water, and wrings it out with a twist that sends a bead sliding down her wrist. She offers it to you first. Gesture of care or reminder of your place, you can't quite tell. You take it, wipe your face. Your hands, the back of your neck where sweat sticks even in this chill. When she takes it back, her fingers brush yours, not by accident. Nothing here happens by accident. A whisper of silk, the clink of hairpins as she shifts her weight. She wipes her own wrists, her collarbone where her robe dips just enough to remind you she's here. And this is Ray, although only just. Outside this thin shell of paper and wood, another world stirs. Footsteps pass by soft, deliberate, never hurried. Somewhere, a muffled laugh. Too sharp to be real, a performance for some other guest behind some other wall. The smell of incense drifts in, floral and sharp, trying to smother the stale traces of smoke and human breath. She turns to you again, her eyes softer now. Maybe, or maybe the lamplight does that for her, turning shadows into secrets. She asks if you're comfortable. Of course you say yes. Even if the floor is cold beneath your knees, even if your back's aching from too many bows into little rest. You'd say yes, even if the roof was leaking. With a word you barely catch, she gestures for you to lie down. The futon creaks beneath your weight. The pillow cradles your neck in a way that feels both too intimate and too impersonal all at once. She smooths the blanket over your chest, tucks it at your shoulders, precise, practiced. She's done this 1,000 times, for men far richer, far more important, and far less polite. Then she sits again, just out of reach, watching you the way a poet might watch a lantern flicker in a draft. Not to see you sleep, but to see how quickly you'll drift off. Or if you even can. Because here's the truth they don't tell you in stories in Yoshiwari. Sleep doesn't come easy. Not when every whisper passes through thin paper. Not when every footstep could be a servant, a debt collector, a rival, or worse, your own conscience coming to drag you home. You close your eyes. You try to breathe deep, like the monks do, counting your heartbeat against the rustle of silk. It doesn't help. You hear everything. The faint pluck of a shamisen somewhere down the corridor, the soft click of someone's getting on polished wood, the brief, muffled sigh from the other side of this paper wall. It's not shame that keeps you awake. It's the sense that you're not meant to belong here, and yet here you are. Somewhere near your ear, you hear her shift her weight. She murmurs a linear poem, maybe, or just a string of polite nothings meant to fill the hush that settles too thickly. She says you should dream of nothing at all. But of course you won't. Your mind's too full of what you paid to get here, of what you'll pay when you leave. You wonder if she's listening to your breath, if she's counting how many times your chest rises and falls before sleep finally wins. You wonder if she cares. You wonder if, when you drift off, she'll slip out to the corridor and tell the next guest that the room is ready, the bedding warm, the night young. Your eyelids grow heavy anyway, because sake is sake and fatigue is fatigue is fatigue. And there's only so long you can pretend to be stronger than both. Your last thought before the darkness seeps in is that maybe just moment will stay with you tomorrow long after the dawn has stripped it of silken secrets and left you with nothing but the echo of laughter through the paper walls. And when you wake, you already know the cost. Morning doesn't break here the way it does at home. It seeps. It drips through the seams where the paper walls meet the ceiling beams, where the scent of stale sake lingers longer than the night's warmth. When you open your eyes, you half expect to find it was all a dream, a trick of lanterns and music and sly, practiced smiles. But the food beneath you is still faintly warm. The pillow still smells of buckwheat, and your shoulders still ache from bowing more than from sleeping. The courtesan is gone, or maybe she never stayed. Her absence leaves behind a hush so heavy you almost whisper thanks to the emptiness itself. The only sound is the shuffle of slipper-red feet in the hallway, distant and careful of, like the night left its secrets behind for the morning to tidy up. You rise slowly, mindful of the paper screens that can turn any clumsy stumble into a slapstick joke for anyone passing outside. The robe you borrowed is still draped over a low stand, neatly folded by hands that never ask if you wanted to stay longer. Your outdoor clogs wait near the door like a reminder. All good dreams end with cold feet on a wooden step. You kneel again, because you're meant to, and a soft knock on the screen reminds you that someone's been waiting for you to get moving. A young boy, maybe 12, maybe 14, it's hard to tell. All shaved head and wide sleeves, slides the door open and bows deeper than you've ever been bowed to in your life. He doesn't look at you directly. He doesn't need to. He knows exactly what you are, a man about to remember the real world is colder than any silk pillow. He helps you gather your things. He gestures toward a shallow basin where you rinse your face, trying not to notice how red your eyes look in the faint morning glow. The cold water doesn't wake you so much as remind you you're supposed to be awake. Somewhere down the hallway, the shame is silent now. The laughter has gone. In its place, a distant, polite cough, the shuffle of wooden trays, the faintest rustle of a brush sweeping last night's footprints off the polished floors. When you step out into the corridor, the air hits you different. The warm hush of candlelight is replaced by the pale blue of dawn. Yoshi wore as lanterns are out now, traded for the same gray sky that covers every street of Edo. Inside these walls, the sky still feels borrowed. You can hear the city waking up beyond the gates, the hawkers call. The clatter of a cart wheel stuck in a rut, the low murmur of men who haven't gone home yet and women who never quite do. At the far end of the hall, a low table waits, your final reckoning. The keeper sits behind it, ink brush poised, ledgers stacked like polite accusations. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. You kneel again, because it's habit now. Your knees almost welcome the sting of tatami burn. He names a number. It's lower than your fear, but higher than your hope. You reach for your purse. Feel the weight. Feel it lighten. The coins make a soft, traitorous clink as they spill onto the lacquered tray. Then, as if remembering you're still a man with an ego, The keeper gestures politely to the side a tray for gratuities. Not required, but well required. The boy reappears at your elbow, waiting to see if you let a coin for the girl who smiled when she didn't have to. For the hot water, for the clean blanket you barely remember using. You pay. Of course you pay. You always pay. And just like that, your pockets feel like they've been turned inside out and politely stitched shut. The final gate out of Yoshiwari is lower than you remember. Or maybe your head just feels heavier than when you ducked under it last night. The boy leads you to the threshold, bows again, and vanishes before you can say thank you, before you can ask if you dreamt half of this. And outside the gate, the street is already alive. Merchants setting up trays of pickled radish and steaming rice balls for men like you, men who drift out of one night only to stumble into another kind of hunger. No one looks at you directly, but you feel it anyway, the invisible ink stamped on your forehead that says you've been inside, that you've bought your illusions and handed them back, worn and wrinkled. Somewhere down the alley, a willow tree sways. Its leaves drip morning dew onto the muddy road, reminding you this street was here long before you words, and will be here long after you've sworn you'll never come back. Of course, you probably will. You bow once more to no one in particular. Step out past the willow gate and promise yourself you'll forget the softness of the futon, the scent of incense on a robe's collar, the sound of laughter behind thin paper walls. But you won't. You'll carry it whole, like a stain you pretend is perfume. You'll remember it when the rice is bland and the sake is cheap and the nights are colder than your purse is deep. And tonight, maybe you'll dream your still there, wallet full, back straight, name unwhispered. But dawn will come again, same as ever. And you'll duck your head under the willow gate again, pretending you have business inside, because that's Yoshiwari, and that's you. If you thought dawn would deliver you back to the safe, dull streets of Edo with your dignity intact, well, surprise. The sun rising over Yoshiwari isn't your alarm clock, it's your final test. Because before you can stagger home to nurse your wallet and your pride, you have to survive the walk past every pair of eyes that knows exactly where you've been. The guards at the gate barely glance at you, your coins have already spoken for you. But just beyond the willow-line path, the real world waits, and it's not polite enough to pretend you're invisible. A passing vendor spots you first, he doesn't call out, but the corner of his mouth twitches just enough to let you know he knows. The neighborhood gossip network is faster than any messenger pigeon, and your little adventure is tomorrow's T-minus house chatter before you even slip your arms back into your day robe. And then there's the debt, because maybe you paid the entrance fee, the meal fee, the bath fee, the gratuity, and the please don't gossip about me to loudly tax. What about the part where you drank more sake than your purse should allow? Or the extra round of shamesen players you requested to impress the courtsy, pretending you knew the right polite words when your tongue kept tripping over itself? That's when they appear. Soft footsteps on muddy streets, quick bows that come with outstretched palms. Not all debts are official here. There's the sake-minus seller's nephew, the sake-minus seller's friend, the man who lent you a coin when you promised you'd be back with double. And here you are, looking like a man who might have borrowed more than he remembers. You duck your head, fingers brushing the thin strings of your coin pouch, feeling the emptiness there. Your sandals scuff the dirt road, heart thumping, a reminder that last night's laughter was paid for in promises, and promises here have a way of turning into shackles you didn't see coming. One man follows you for 3 streets, steps polite, voice softer than you expect for someone about to mention your outstanding favor. He doesn't raise his tone, doesn't curse or threaten. He just reminds you how easy it would be to help you out. Just one more loan. One more chance to slip back into the lantern glow, where your name means nothing and your coins mean everything. A little more silver now, a lot more interest later. You know better, or you think you do. You bow, you apologize, you promise, Your mouth fills with the same sweet, empty courtesy you used last night when you told the court saint her hairpin was the prettiest thing you'd ever seen. Maybe you meant it then. But you don't mean this. Or maybe you do. The debt collector smiles. He knows you'll be back. They always come back. A few blocks further, you spot another pair of boys leaning against a shuttered storefront. Eyes sharp under messy hair. They don't follow. They don't need to. They see the half-minus stuffed kimono. The faint trace of incense still clinging to your collar. The nervous flick of your eyes. They know. And if you can't pay, someone else will. Or maybe you'll pay with labor or favors, or your name whispered in a register you'll wish you'd never signed. You keep walking. One sandal strap snaps under the strain. You bend to fix it, fingers trembling with the cold and the shame. The street is waking up now, vendors calling out prices for fish, charcoal, rice. Housewives haggling over daikon. All of it feels louder than it should be, like the world is reminding you don't quite belong here anymore. Not today. Ahead, a small tea stall offers the thin comfort of cheap broth and warm steam. You duck inside, bowing low. The old man behind the counter doesn't ask where you've been. He doesn't have to. He slides you a chipped cup, eyes on the stove. The broth tastes like water, but it's better than the silence of your own thoughts. You pay with the last of your copper. He gives you back a single sen. Like a joke, or a mercy. You step back outside, half-minus fed, half-minus broke, fully reminded that Yoshiwara isn't a place you visit. It's a place you carry home in your sleeves, in your breath, in the debt that will follow you like a polite shadow, bowing deeper than any court saint ever did. Your feet ache. Your pride aches more. You pass a lantern still flickering in the early sun. Someone forgot to snuff it out. For a second, you think about turning back, begging for one more hour behind the paper walls, where your debts don't matter and your name sounds exotic and new. But the wind cuts through your robe, sharp and clean. It reminds you where you really belong, outside the gate. Pockets turned out. Lessons half-minus learned. So you bow again, this time to the morning, to the debt collectors waiting in tomorrow's alley. To the piece of you that will probably find its way back through the willow gate, even if you swear you won't. You won't last a day in an Edo brothel, maybe not. But you'll last long enough to owe them the rest of your nights. If you thought your secrets were safe in Yoshiwara, you're about to discover just how thin paper walls really are, both the literal ones and the ones guarding your reputation. Because you're in Edo. Gossip moves like candles, smoke soft, unstoppable, and guaranteed to cling to your sleeves long after you leave the room. It starts the moment you pass back through the willow gate. Behind you, the paper lanterns flicker out one by one, but the words they lit up all night don't fade so easily. A single look from a nosy neighbor, a curious vendor, a passing apprentice, and suddenly your name is riding the morning breeze down every alley and into every tea house worth its salt. You think you were discreet. You think no one saw you bow deeply to the doorman, or fumble your coin purse at the reception, or stammer your best attempts at polite speech while the Oiron smile that says, "I'll never last." But the truth is, even if they didn't see you, they heard about you. The maids chatter. The Bathish boys whisper. The shamesome players hum a tune that sounds suspiciously like your story, set to strings and drifting out through open shutters. By mid-minus morning, the gossip is already dressed up for travel. It trades its slippers for straw sandals and trots down the main street, owing to old ladies carrying fresh vegetables and dropping by the local barber for a trim. Because barbers, if you didn't know, are the backbone of any city's rumor mill. Some clerk at the rice store is telling your tale to a bored fishmonger who will repeat it to a boatman by dusk. By tomorrow, a cousin you haven't spoken to in 5 years will be wondering aloud if that was really you he heard about, lounging with a court saint and stumbling out before dawn. And the stories never stay polite. What begins as a simple truth you spent a night in Yoshiwara blooms into a saga. Maybe you embarrassed yourself with clumsy words. Maybe you drank more than you could pay for. Maybe you tried to flatter the wrong Oiran with a poem you half-minus remembered from a temple bell inscription. The facts melt into flourishes. By the time the story returns to your own ears, you might not even recognize yourself except for the sting of knowing the bones of it are true. You see, Edo is a city of invisible strings. Everything is connected by whispers: a merchant's debt, a samurai's secret lover, a rice stacks that mysteriously vanished on its way upriver, and the men who stepped through Yoshiwara's gates. They are never just customers. They are walking stories, living, breathing, fumbling bundles of fresh gossip waiting to be unwrapped by anyone with ears. What can you do? You can protest, of course. You can bow low and mutter that it was you. That you were home reading Confucian texts by candlelight while your lookalike lost face and coin in the floating world. But denial is a weak cloth here, easily torn by sharper tongues. So you try to reclaim a shred of dignity. Maybe you stand taller when you pass your neighbor's gate. Maybe you pretend not to hear the snicker from the fishmonger's stall. Maybe you drop an extra coin at the local shrine, hoping the gods of decency will wash your name cleaner than the Bathish ever could. But deep down, you know, once your feet touched those tatami mats, once your voice joined the hum of that hidden quarter, you became part of the story that Edo tells itself every night and retells every dawn. The city needs its gossip needs to know who's respectable and who's pretending, who's pure and who's beautifully, scandalously not. And you? You're the freshest chapter. For now. Soon enough, some other hopeful fool will trade his week's wages for a moment of candlelit affection, stumble out with too much sake in his veins and too little caution on his tongue, and take your place in the rumor mill. You'll fade back into the background, your name softer on people's lips, your blush hidden by the next man's mistake. But make no mistake, Yoshiwara remembers. The next time you step through that willow gate, the guards will know. The doorman will remember how much you tipped, how awkwardly you bowed, whether you paid on time. The courtesan will remember your nervous hands and your careful words and your quiet wish that none of this would follow you home. It did. It always does. That's the real price you paid that you can't weigh in copper or silver. A debt you carry on your back. Invisible yet heavy, each rumor a paper charm pinned to your collar by people you'll never meet. And when you hear someone else's name drift through the morning air, someone else's scandal, someone else's shame, maybe you'll smile. Maybe you'll bow your head, sip your tea, and pretend you're not secretly grateful that, for once, it's not about you. At least, not today. Morning in Yoshiwara always feels like waking up from a dream you can't quite remember but can't quite shake either. The lanterns have been snuffed out, the last cups of sake poured down wooden drains. The chains and strings gone quiet except for the faint echo still buzzing somewhere behind your ears. You step into the pale dawn light blinking like a man who's been asleep for years, though you didn't really sleep, did you? Your gate slapped the street in slow, careful steps. You clutch your coin cursed lighter than when you arrived, but it's lighter now when you arrived. So much lighter that you feel its emptiness before you even peek inside. A few silver moan clink like tiny reminders of how cheap or expensive a night can be, depending on which side of the papered oars you're standing. You pass the willow gate again. Last night it seemed to whisper you in, come on, brave fool. Come see what you're worth. Now it lets you out without a second glance. The guards don't bow. They don't need to. They know you'll be back if you're lucky enough to scrape together more coins, or unlucky enough to crave the dream more than you fear it's caused. Outside the walls, Edo's real world yawns awake. Vendors lift bamboo blinds. Apprentices sweep the night's secrets from stoops into the gutter. You spot a fishmonger setting up his stall, eyes catching yours for half a second. He knows. Or he thinks he knows. Maybe he was once you. Maybe he will be you again. These streets turn men into echoes if they stay too long. Your sandals catch on a loose stone. You nearly trip. A passing paper seller grins at your clumsy dance but doesn't say a word. HES too busy rolling up fresh broadsheets. Some with polite headlines about the shogun's latest orders. Others with not minus so minus polite rumors about who stumbled out of which gate with whose borrowed kimono. You wonder what your neighbors will say when you slide open your own organ. Will your mother look up from the hearth with that slight tilt of her head, measuring the shadows under your eyes? Will your wife pretend not to smell the faint drift of incense and sit clinging to your sleeve? Or maybe you live alone, maybe the only judge of your nights is you. And that might be the cruelest judge of all. Coins gone. Pride bruised. Secrets lighter than air, yet heavier than your coin purse. This is the real tax of Yoshiwara, not just silver, but the small pieces of you that stay behind, folded into tatami creases, whispered into a courtesan's sleeve, brushed off on the wooden walkway like so much stray dust. Still, as you round a corner back into the heart of Edo proper, you can't help it. You catch yourself thinking, was it worth it? And the truth, though you'll never say it aloud, is yes. For a moment you were someone else. For a moment. The world outside the willow gate paused. The debts, the chores, the tiny humiliations of everyday life. They waited for you, yes, but they waited outside. There were shadows and laughter and careful glances that made you feel both powerful and powerless at the same time. Men have given up more for less. Some never make it back out. Some lose everything on repeat. Reputation, coin, family, health. Only to stumble back down Lantern Alley with hopeful eyes and trembling hands, chasing a dream they already know how it ends. As for you, you tug your robe tighter against the morning chill. You count the coins you have left, enough for breakfast, maybe enough for the boatman's fare if you want to vanish to some quieter district for a while. But you won't. Not really. Yoshiwara has its own tides, and once you've felt the pull, it's only a matter of time before you drift back in again. Because you didn't survive the brothel. Not really. You didn't last a day. But you lasted just long enough to want it again. And that, my friend, is why the dream never dies, only the coin purse does. So step out now, bow to the morning sun. Pretend you're just another respectable man on another respectable street, your secrets folded neat as a fan in your sleeve. If you're lucky, the next knock at your door will be something ordinary, an apprentice delivering rice, a neighbor asking about the weather. If you're less lucky, it'll be a debt collector, or worse, a rumor you can't outrun. But for now you survived. For now you walk home with the city yawning open around you and the paper walls of your night folding back into memory. And when you lay your head down later, on your own futon in your own clean wound, listen for it, the faint echo of shamesen strings, a whisper of silk against paper, the hush of secrets that belong to you and you alone until the next time you need to feel alive enough to lose them again. So here you are now, back in your own safe corner, blanket tucked, eyes fluttering. The lanterns of Yoshiwara flicker only in memory, the paper walls closing around you like the softest drain. Let the stories of Edo slip through your mind like drifting lanterns on a river, bright enough to see for a moment, gentle enough to fade without fear. Your coins can rest tonight, your secrets too. In this moment, you owe nothing to anyone, not to the gatekeepers, not to the gossip, not to the shadows waiting behind paper doors. It's only you in this quiet room, the hush of your breath, the slow drift into sleep. May your dreams be light tonight. May the street outside your door stay calm. The willow leaves stay still. You've walked far enough for now. The floating world can wait till morning. For now, rest easy, friend. You made it back.